Nice.
My name is Louis. I'm taking the class as a refresher. Just want to have like a structured curriculum.
Hopefully that's happening.
My name is Isham, and I hope to get a better clarity and just some information about some of the rulings and why and how they were made and created in such a way.
Perfect. All right. Well, alhamdulillah. Happy that I hope we're able to fulfill that, and I hope that you guys are enjoying the class so far. I know that 45 minutes is like a really short time. And I know, like, especially because last class was actually the first class that we actually really like jumped and delved into like the fiqh stuff, and I was moving very quickly. The reason why I feel like I always feel a need to like give a disclaimer as to why I'm particular about it being 45 minutes is because I feel like after a work day or a school day or like everything happening, and then you want to delve into like something that can be so technical, and spending like an hour and a half, an hour and a half is like an ideal time for me as a teacher, as students, and me having been on the other end, spending an hour and a half learning about fiqh stuff just kind of like wipes you out. Like the rest of your day is done. You're like, okay, that was a lot of information, especially as we keep going. Like today will be the first day that we will kind of go into difference of opinion a little bit, where, we're going to talk about wudu, and we want to say, well, this person says that this thing is mandatory, while this person says it's not mandatory. That's so much information to be digesting and keeping in your mind, and then you're doing that at the end of the day, and it just gets really stressful, But part of the reason why this particular class came up was because I felt like when we're learning fiqh and stuff, sometimes we'll go and learn fiqh al-salah, for example, and we'll spend a lot of time learning that, but then you don't really know how to place it, because you'll learn fiqh al-tahara here, how to like clean yourself, all this stuff, and you'll learn fiqh al-salah here like 25-6 years later. Then you'll learn fiqh al-zakah here randomly. So being able to place everything, I'm a huge placer. I put things in boxes, put people in boxes. I'm like, this is where you belong, this is where you belong. And it just helps me navigate my life a lot better. So that's kind of why we chose to do this way. So we're gonna go ahead and jump right into it. I know I said I would share the PowerPoint with you guys, but they're telling me to record now. So this day is just getting a lot more complicated. So I will try my best to keep this as clear as possible. I know PowerPoints are very huge help in terms of aiding like the visual mind and being able to see things, but hopefully I can speak clear enough for you guys to be able to stay on track, inshallah. So last class, we were able to talk about actual impurity, right? And we said the actual impurity are things that are on your body, or on your body, on the place of prayer that you would like to pray in, or like on your clothing, for example. And we said that those actual impurities are broken into two types. Do you guys remember? Anyone remember what were the two types? I love teaching in person. I just want you guys to know that, because I just look at your face and I'm like, you. Online, I get scared to call people out, but in person, I'm not scared. Just want you to know that. So what are the two types? Big one. Very good. There's minor and major, right? Small one and big one. I like that. So with the minor ones, as long as it is less than a quarter of the entire area. Okay, so that's like a quarter of your body, or a quarter of the clothing that you're wearing, or a quarter of the area that you're gonna pray in. Okay, as long as it's less than a quarter, there's nothing to do with that. You just leave it there. But then when it's a major one, how much is that? Anybody remember? I know it's like a quarter. Very good. It's almost like a size of a dollar coin, right? As long as it is less than the size of a dollar coin, there's nothing to do with it. Now, say it's more than those areas, and the specifics of it, the reason why I gave you guys the PowerPoint is because the specifics of it are not things you need to memorize. It's really not that big of a deal. It's a reference point. You have something to go back and look at and say, oh, this may be an issue. Let me go check if this was an issue. Make sense? So when you do have to follow up or fix that situation, what are the things that you do? How do you clean up? There are 4 ways possible. Ghusl is for legal.
Oh, you're saying
Actual.
Wiping,
okay. Washing. Scraping. Not dirt.
It's like dry.
Very good, drying. Very good. So dirt kind of goes under washing. So they take dirt as a form of washing. So there is washing, wiping, scraping, and drying. Okay. These are for things that are on your clothing or on the floor, the place that you're trying to pray in. When it comes to on your body, and it can be for on your body as well, but when it comes to being on your body, so the recording is going, and so because I know some of you guys, just in case you want to watch the recording, the PowerPoint, I'm definitely still putting the PowerPoint on the recording, and I'm still going to send it out to you. So if you go back and you watch the recording, like this whole thing will be there. I watch recordings on double speed just because I don't know why I do that. Sometimes it's not a good idea. Let me tell you why. Because then you go and listen to that person again, and you can't listen to them in real life, like in their actual speak that they speak in. Yes. So, but when you're removing from your body, when you're removing from your body, you can remove by wiping, washing, scraping, as well as like having something be dried out. But that's something that it's like, you should probably just wash it. You should probably wash it or wipe it off. The biggest way of removing impurities from one's body is called istinja. Okay. Istinja is something that occurs after someone uses the restroom. Right. So istinja is the removal of impurities from oneself after one uses the restroom. The importance of istinja is not only for cleanliness, but also because it is a prerequisite to wudu and ghusl. I told you guys we'll talk about wudu and ghusl today, inshallah, hopefully. If not, we'll definitely get through wudu. There's a lot to talk about, so we'll definitely get through wudu, inshallah. So it's a requirement in order for someone to make wudu or ghusl. And what that means is that, say for instance, someone uses a restroom and they don't do istinja, okay? They don't clean themselves at all. And then maybe like later on in the day's Maghrib time, they make wudu. Your wudu doesn't count because you still have to remove impurities from you. Does that make sense? So we said that wudu and ghusl, those are in a separate category. They're like a more legal, spiritual kind of impurity. You cannot put yourself in a legal state of purity while you have actual impurities on your body, because then that would kind of defeat the purpose. Does that make sense? Sounds a little confusing, right? So now the question goes, and how does one do istinja? A lot of times you will hear that the only way to do istinja is with water, that nothing else is acceptable. That's not the case. There are three levels, okay? Level number one is wiping, and that's okay. If you wipe, that's fine. It's not the best method, but it's okay, okay? Level number two is just water, and that's better. That's better. It's better to use just water. But the best method is to wash oneself with water and wipe. That is the best method. And this is the method that the Apostle and the companions used to do. Now, someone may say, well, they didn't have tissue paper at that time. How do they wipe? They used soft rocks, right? These rocks that would kind of like break apart a little bit. That's what they would use. And so the Prophet advised them that if you have water, then you should use water as well to cleanse yourself. Now, there's the do's and the don'ts, okay? For the do's, you should use your left hand when you're washing. The second thing is that you should be thorough, but you don't have to be OCD, right? And I say that because we do, especially when we're focused on our spirituality, we're trying to go into our prayer, our salah, all these things. We're trying to be as thorough as possible. But sometimes what that ends up happening is that it creates this level of like a barrier between you and your salah. Because you're there for like, 30 minutes, 40 minutes cleaning yourself, you keep wiping, you keep doing this, and you don't feel like it's clean. You just have to be thorough. You don't have to be like it doesn't have to be something that you have to obsess over. Does that make sense? So you're just thorough, but you don't have to obsess over it. And then last but not least is that you have to wash your hands after. I understand that this sounds like common sense. I deal with a lot of kids and teenagers, and just, I'm not saying you guys are those teenagers that I deal with, but sometimes common sense is not common sense, okay? So it's important to wash your hands after. right? Now, the don'ts are you don't use anything valuable to cleanse yourself. So, like, yeah, you don't use, I'm not gonna get into it, like extravagance and all this stuff. Just don't use anything valuable, you know? Don't use like a dollar bill to clean yourself. Like, that's just, it's a little strange. You shouldn't do that. It's just not a good idea. Just don't do that. You don't use impurities itself. So say for instance, someone tries to use urine to clean themselves, that defeats the purpose because you're literally cleansing yourself from that. And then last but not least is you cannot use anything that may hurt you, right? So istinja is about removing impurities from one's body, right? And it's a prerequisite that goes into wudu and ghusl, which we will get to today. Any questions? Sister Nadia, any questions? We have one person online, so I'm gonna make sure she's good too. Perfect. So now we're going to talk about water, because in order for us to talk about wudu, we have to talk about the type of water that you would make wudu with, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً طَهُورًا, that God has sent down, وَأَنزَلْنَا, and we sent down water from the sky as a pure thing, something that's purifying, right? There's a difference between something being pure and something being purifying. And I say that because when something is pure, it means that you can eat it, you can touch it, you can have it in your home. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. We just spent like a whole 45 minutes last class talking about impure things, right? But just because something is pure does not mean that you can use it as a form of spiritual purification. Does not mean that it is purifying. So water that comes down from the sky, meaning rainwater or lake water, as long as the lake is pretty big, or like ocean, things of that nature, that is, or a river, stuff like that, that water is purifying, okay? Even if the color may be different, or even like, for example, some ocean water can be very salty. Still fine. It's still considered to be purifying, which means that you can use that water for things like istinja. You can use that water for things like ghusl or wudu or whatever the case may be, because it's all natural water. Now, what about something that has a natural water like substance, but is not actually water? So for example, if someone was to juice a white grape, right? You juiced a lot of them, it's very clear, right? Looks like water. The consistency of it is very much so like loose, so it looks like water, but it's not water. So you can't use that, even though it's pure for you to ingest and drink and whatever the case may be, it wouldn't be permissible for you to use that for making ghusl or making wudu or doing istinja or cleaning your clothing. So like, for example, juice, like if there's like a clear juice, then that wouldn't be permissible to use for any type of like cleanliness, just because at that point it's not considered to be water anymore, it's considered to be juice. So whenever something gets mixed in with water and it completely changes its properties and it's not considered to be water anymore, then it's no longer purifying. Does that make sense? So when it comes to, now we're saying that, but what about if, for example, a pool, right? Pools are very big. They're very big and things of that nature, and there's some cleaning substance that is in it. As long as it does not completely overwhelm the pool, where the pool now is not a water pool, it's a soap pool now, then that's different, right? If it's still water, even though it may change the taste a little bit because of the chlorine, some would say it's still purifying, so you can still use it. Does that make a little bit more sense why this conversation is happening? So someone would say, well, like, can I go to the pool and make wudu? Technically, you can. Do you want to do that? If there's a lot of people in the pool, the answer is no. Because people definitely do a lot of things in the pool that they shouldn't do, okay? So even though you can't see it change its properties and so on and so forth, you should still just be mindful of it in that way. Now, when it comes to say for instance, there is, you have like a bucket of water. So I know like anybody who's traveled overseas or even like further in the South, I'm from Georgia. So like here, when I was growing up, when we were little, when it would rain, people would put buckets outside still. Like even though I grew up in Georgia, and you would collect the rainwater, they would boil it, and then you would drink from that. Like when I was little, we don't do that anymore. Now we just buy water bottles. Fine, it's cool. Okay. Um, Now, say for instance, something that is considered to be impure, like maybe a bird poops in the water. Okay, so what do you do with that water? Are you allowed to use that still, or do you have to get rid of the water? Now, the answer is depends on the quantity of the water. If it's a large body of water, say for instance, it's like you have a huge like bucket, maybe it's like about this big, and there's just a little bit on one side, you would just clean out that part of the water. If it's a smaller bucket, then you can't use that water for something purifying. So large bodies of water is fine, but smaller bodies of water is not fine. So that's why that conversation is important, because then someone will say, well, what if something impure falls into the ocean? Well, it's the ocean. You know what I'm saying? That's like it's fine. It's like such a large body of water, or like a big lake, or like a big pool, things of that nature. So when things that are impure fall into there, you're still allowed to use it as long as the qualities of the water are not overwhelmed. If they become overwhelmed, then it's no longer considered to be water, so therefore you can't use it anymore. Does that make a lot of sense? Okay, perfect. So now that we've covered that, we can get into wudu. Well, almost ended the meeting. Any questions while I pull up the second PowerPoint?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So is it okay to be in a state of impurity if you're not going to perform an act of worship?
Yeah, it's okay. Is it okay to be in a state of impurity if you're not going to perform an act of worship? Yes. Okay, so that concludes our conversation on actual impurity. Okay, so now we're going to go back to what's called legal impurity. And this is where you have 2 points. You have where it can be something that is hadath asghar or hadath akbar, right? Hadath asghar is a minor legal impurity, and hadath akbar is a major legal impurity. For minor, you get out of it by making wudu, and for major, you get out of it by making ghusl. Okay, so right now, we're gonna focus on wudu. The question now comes into when is wudu required? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran in Surah Al-Ma'idah, which is the 5th chapter in the Quran, He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, إِذَا كُنْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ, when you are ready to go and establish yourself, stand up for prayer, فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ, then you should wash your face, وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ, and you should wash your hands, meaning your arms, up until like your elbows, وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ, and you should wipe over your head, وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ, and you should wash your feet until the ankle. Okay, so this is where it establishes when we should make wudu. You make wudu for the purpose of prayer. Okay, mainly. Salah is number one. The second thing that requires wudu is tawaf. You guys know what tawaf is? Now, I love Muslim translations of things. It's my favorite thing to do. They use very ancient words, okay, circumambulation, all right? It is when you do the 7 circuits around the Kaaba, okay? And so wudu is required for tawaf because the Prophet ﷺ said in the narration that there is no tawaf without wudu, okay? So wudu is required for tawaf. The third thing that is a requirement for wudu, that you have to have wudu to do, is holding the Quran to read it, okay? So holding the actual mushaf and being able to like touch the letters and the words. When it comes to recitation of the Quran, there's a difference of opinion there as to whether or not you have to have wudu to do the recitation. And that difference of opinion, we mainly cover it when we get to ghusl, because in ghusl we'll talk about like menstruation and things of that nature. And talking about that, then you have the question of, well, can I recite the Quran if I'm not praying and things of that nature? So we're going to definitely cover that in this next part. But holding the Quran, there's no difference of opinion. You have to be in a state of wudu in order to hold the Quran, to read it. So that's something to keep in mind. And the last thing is sajda. Okay, so sajda, for example, sajda to tilawa, when you're reciting the Quran and then an ayah of sajda comes up and you have to do sajda, then you have to be in the state of wudu to do that sajda because it's a part of salah. Does that make sense so far? Yeah.
So what about if you just making such a general feeling of gratitude?
You should make wudu before you do it. Yeah. So there is some people say you don't have to. I believe, and according to the different research that I've done, that you should, just because there are times where you're not in the state of wudu, you may be reciting Quran, but it's still required of you to make wudu before you do sajda. Then I don't see why it wouldn't be required to do it in sajda to shukr, in the sajda for gratitude. Yes.
So like when you were talking about like how you when you're holding the Quran you have to, and if when you're holding the Quran reading it, that includes like if you're reading it off of your phone.
No, because the phone. So does that include when you're reading it from the phone? I'm just repeating the questions because I'm like, no. The reason why is because the phone's overwhelming properties is not the Quran itself. However, when you are holding it on your phone, the Quran on your phone, you should try to avoid touching the words if you're not in a state of wudu. Does that make more sense? Yeah. Question.
So if you're reading for iModern, you don't make the sajda.
Yes, you don't. You'll make them up later. So, and you don't have to make up multiple sajda. So, like the way that sajda works. So, for instance, if a woman is not praying, she's on her menses, and she was reciting the Quran and she recites a verse of sajda, because it is required to be in the state of wudu, she will not make that sajda then. Okay, but the way that sajda works is actually pretty cool. That you could keep reading or whatever. One sajda is sufficient to make up for all the sajdas that you needed to do. So once she's in the position to be in a state of wudu, then you'll just make the sajda to make up for all of them. Does that make sense? Yes? Confused? Anybody?
I have
Yeah, sure.
for shukr.
Mhm.
Say that you're in the street, you're not in a state of wudu. You almost got hit by you got avoided getting hit by a car, and you want to make such that. Like, I've seen in videos that people just drop.
That's fine.
That's fine.
It was out of a it was out of a very big situation, and it just kind of happened naturally. Sometimes sajda does just happen naturally. You don't have to go back and make it up because you weren't out of the state of wudu. It's just that if you're gonna consciously do it, you should just make wudu and do it. Make sense? Any questions? No? So just to repeat that list a little bit, the first thing is salah, okay, because we get it from the ayah. The second thing is tawaf, because of the hadith the Prophet says. Then there's Quran. There is an ayah that alludes to it. There's also a hadith that the Prophet says. And then the fourth thing is sajda. Okay, so these are all things that require wudu. Now, we're going to break wudu into two things. It's going to be what's called the fara'id. So these are the things that are absolutely obligatory to do. And then there's going to be the second part, which is the sunnah. The reason why it's broken into two things is because you have the question sometimes of what if I forgot to do X, Y, and Z? Well, it depends on what category that thing falls into. If it falls into a fara'id, then if that's the case, then you will have to repeat the wudu because there's a major element of it that is missing. But if it falls into a sunnah, it's not necessarily considered to be a major element. So you don't have to necessarily make up the wudu, or you don't have to go back and do it. Does that make sense? Sometimes you will make wudu, you will go stand in salah, and then you remember, I didn't wash my feet. It's like, what do I do? Do I have to go make wudu again, make up this prayer? If you did not wash your feet, yes, you have to make up the wudu, make the prayer over again, because feet is a major element. But if it's something else, then there's a conversation there. So when it comes to the fara'id of wudu, the very first thing is washing of the face. Okay, so the face is considered to be from one's hairline, okay, all the way to like the tip of their earlobes, and then all the way like underneath your face as well. So that's why you'll see people will take the water and they will cup their entire face. That's why, because you want to get the whole face. So from the top of the hairline, wherever one's hairline starts, so from the top of the hairline to the right here of the earlobes and then the face. That all of that's considered to be the face. The second thing is washing of the arms. So you see people will cup the water again and they will include like their whole hand because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says aydiyakum. So washing your hands up until your elbows. So you will cup the water, you'll wash all the way up, and then you'll go past the elbow a little bit. Going past the elbow is to make sure that you're getting all of the crevices and you're not having any spot that is considered to be dry. Right? So that's why you always start with your right side. But that's like a more of a sunnah thing. We'll talk about that. So you'll go from the top of your fingertips all the way over. Okay, so that's one. The third thing is the wiping of the head. Now, when it comes to the wiping of the head, there's a difference of opinion as to what is considered to be the maximum, or I mean, the minimum amount. Right? So but what you would do is that you don't have to wash your head. Okay, the washing of the hair and making sure that the water gets all the way into every part of the scalp, that's a ghusl issue. It's not a wudu issue. So that's why it's called wiping. So you'll take a little bit of water and you will go over, okay? In some opinions, you have to come back up. Most people say that just going over one time is sufficient, okay? When it comes to about what is the bare minimum that you have to do, right? The Shafis, they say that it has to be like 4 fingers worth. Okay, so like if it's 4 fingers worth, then that's the bare minimum. Does that make sense? And then you have that the Malikis say that it's 2 fingers worth. Okay, and then the Ahnaf, Abu Hanifa, they say that it's this much. So like almost like a quarter of the head, basically. So sometimes you may see someone, especially girls, making wudu, and then they just take the water and they just stuff it in their hijab like this because they're in public, and it's like I'm trying to get in and out, right? The best is to do the whole head. What we're talking about in times of situations where you're just quick, you need to be quick in and out. What is the bare minimum? So that's why you will see people do that. Now, is it the best practice all the time? No. Because what fiqh does is it provides us the parameters and the boundaries. So it's telling us that, listen, if you're in a situation, this is what you can cut, right? This is the minimum. You can't go below this. Does that make sense? So it's not saying this is the ideal practice. It's saying that if you're going to cut something, you can't go below this. This is the minimum that you should do. So the main practice that we should do is it should go at least one time back all the way. Some people include the neck. That is not a practice that is, it's something that sometimes is cultural. The second thing is there's one narration where a companion did it and the Prophet did not say anything to him. So that's why some people take it as sunnah, because the sunnah is things that the Prophet did, he said, approved of or disapproved of, right? So the fact that the Prophet did not say anything, they say, okay, well, you should include the neck. But we don't find that to be a common practice. We find that to be like something that a companion did and then continued on doing, okay? And then,
Do you have to do the sides of it too? Can you just go like this?
that's it. You just have to do this and then back. So it's better to just take both of your hands, wet it. You don't want it too wet, and just go back like this, and then you can come back. Make sense? And then number 4 is washing the feet. These are the fara'id. These are the things that are absolutely obligatory. If you miss one of these, you have to go back and make up the wudu over again. Okay? So you have to wash your feet. The feet includes the toes in between them all the way up until the ankles. All right? So someone may say, okay, well, can I just wipe over the top of my foot? No, right? Because it includes your entire foot. So you have to make sure you get the whole foot. Now, you may not like putting your foot in the sink. That's fine. You better figure it out. Like whether you put some paper towels on the floor, take the water, However, sometimes the tub is not a bad idea. Just go ahead, put your foot in the tub, wash your feet, call it a day. But your entire foot up until your ankle. So these are the faraid of wudu. When it comes to things that are required, when it comes to other sections, there's a little bit of a difference of opinion whether you have to, whether it's considered to be an obligatory thing. You guys remember when we went through the chart and we said this is fun, this is wajib, this is right. So now when things are fun, okay, obligatory, there are no difference of opinion about those things. Conversations of difference of opinion happen in wajib, okay, and mustahab. So wajib are things that are considered to be like, highly encouraged, almost to the point of fun. And then mustahab are things that are considered to be very encouraged, like you should do it, recommended, right? So now we're going to move a little bit to like this wajib section. So for example, when you first learn how to do wudu, you were probably told that you absolutely have to have a niyyah, right? You have to come and make intention. This is actually a section of wajib. Some people say you do, while others say you don't. Okay, so the first thing is niyyah. So we're now in a section of areas of things. I'm going to turn this around. We're in a section of areas of things that are considered, I don't know if you guys can see it, but things that are considered to be difference of opinion, but they're like wajib. Make sense? Like someone is saying it's wajib, someone's saying no, it's recommended. It's not saying it's not founded at all. It's recommended or is something you have to do. Does that make sense? Higher on the list. But now we're trying to determine, is it fard or not? Is it fard? Like, are you, if you don't do it, do you have to repeat it? Or is it something that if you leave it off once or twice, you're okay? Make sense? Okay, the first thing is niyyah, intention. Yes.
This is kind of like a question about like reasoning, but since actions are just by intention, like why do scholars say you do not have an intention?
So it's not even about not having intention. It's more so even classifying it as what is intention. In the sense that some say like these here, they say you have to specifically, the Shafi'i, Imam Ahmed, and Imam Malik, they say that, you have to verbally do an intention to make wudu, right? Like you come, and not verbally, but like in your mind or whatever you're saying, I'm making intention to do wudu for XYZ prayer. As opposed to the Ahnaf, they say that like even approaching the wudu station is considered to be intention. Does that make sense? So it's more of a conversation of actualization versus whether or not, you know what I'm saying, like how you do it. So Ahnaf, the Ahnaf, Imam Abu Hanifa, you'll find that in a lot of things they don't require intention because they believe that approaching the act itself is intention. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like when I was growing up, I was taught this dua
Mhm.
from the list that I could do. So it's like, so like while doing the wudu, we recite that. I still do it, but my kids were not taught that. So I
Yeah.
feel like the action is the intention. but
Exactly.
Yeah, obviously, if you go into the bathroom and you mindlessly doing wudu, you're not doing it mindlessly.
Yeah.
You have the intention to do the zuhur or asr salah.
Yes.
That should count. But
Yeah.
I'm still in the habit of deciding to do it.
Yeah, sometimes we get, and that's fine. It's a dua. Duas are great. So you don't even have to stop the habit. But it's more so about a conversation of actualizing it versus like, can me approaching it be considered to be? I don't know why I didn't turn this around a long time ago. This make a lot more sense. As opposed to me approaching it, would that be considered to be sufficient enough for intention? So then you have what is called tartib. Tartib means an order. Okay, it means doing it in the exact order, right? So we haven't talked about sunnah style. Actually, I'm gonna edit the PowerPoint a little bit before I send it to you guys, and I'm gonna add the sunnah style in between. Now that I'm thinking about it, sometimes when I'm teaching, I'm like, you could have done that a little bit better. So I'm in the real life editing, okay? So I'm gonna add the sunnah style so that you guys can understand tartib. But tartib is something that it's saying, do you have to do it in order? So do you have to like do your hands, mouth, nose, face, like that? Or can you do it out of order, okay? In accordance to the Shafi, the when it says Ahmed, it's the Hanbali, and then the Maliki. I don't go through the background of fiqh of the different opinions, just because it's a lot of work, and I believe that is like a different class for it. But I also recognize that everybody comes from different backgrounds, so that's the only reason why I'm bringing it here. But they say that you have to go in order. Now, the Ahnaf is not that they're saying you can go like wildfire, and just do whatever you want. The reason why they are not attached to the order is because they say that, like, say for instance, you finish making wudu and you forgot to wash your head, wipe your head. Okay, you finish, you forgot to wipe your head. Now, as long as you didn't leave the area of wudu or you didn't go and start praying, you can wipe the head and your wudu will be complete. As opposed to them, they're saying that is absolutely necessary for the order. So if you miss out on the order, you have to start your wudu over again. That's where the conversation is. It's about what do I do from here? Does that make sense? Yes.
So can you start at the part that you missed? Because then you're still trying to get order from and then you forgot to do your arm. Then can you pick it up with arm?
Let me find out, and I don't, because I have an answer, but I'm not confident in it. So let me look into that and get back to you. Okay. Muwalla, this is as interesting. So muwalla, well, I'm gonna go here first. Tasmiyah, to say Bismillah before you start. Only the Hanabila say that you have to do tasmiyah before you start. It's recommended, it's highly encouraged, you should do it. But if you don't start it with it, is your wudu counted? Still, yes. It's kind of like the intention thing back again, okay? Then you have istinshaq. Istinshaq is the putting the water in the nose and then blowing it out, right? If you miss it, do you have to redo your wudu? The Hanabla say yes. And they take this because all of the narrations that they present as their evidence, the Prophet did it. As opposed to the Ahnaf, they take their, or like other scholars, they take their narrations from Ibn Masud, and there's sometimes where Ibn Masud said, well, the Prophet did it one time, the Prophet did it 3 times, the Prophet didn't do it this time. All of them, they're based in narrations. They're all based in narrations. The beautiful thing about fiqh, a lot of times, like when I first started learning fiqh, I thought it was the boringest subject ever. Like I was like, I can't wait to be done with this class. I can't wait to be over. Like it's so technical, it's so annoying. I don't know, I don't get it. But then as I started really realizing where different evidences come from and why there's so much difference of opinion is what killed me. Because at the beginning of my studies, I was in this mindset that there should be no difference of opinion in Islam, right? Everybody should be practicing the same exact way. And because there's difference of opinion, like, do we even know what we're doing? That's kind of, because that's how you're raised, right? You're raised, you're like, everybody's like, this is the only way. This is anybody that does this a different way, they're doing it wrong. And we had so many imams come through our community that would then come and speak in absolutes that made me confused. So then when I went off to study, and we had so much difference of opinion, I was like, what is happening? Okay. But then I realized that these narrations and the way that the Prophet would do things in a different way was simply, I'm taking you guys this time, sorry, was simply because of the fact that human beings are human beings and they need room to roam. So he did all of these different ways and different methodologies that still have a basis, right? There's still a basis, there's still a foundation. And then you have all of this room to roam to figure out, okay, what fits best for me or what works best for me. So then you had these scholars that came generations later and they codified it. And when they codified it, they said, okay, we're going to take all of the narrations of Ibn Mas'ud, for example, anhu, because he follows all of this methodology of the Prophet, and it's a method. Right? And then you have someone else that comes and says, well, we're going to take all the narrations of Ibn Abbas, because it seems like the Prophet showed him all this way. And that's what worked for their time. And so when I started learning or being able to see it In that way, it made me realize that the Prophet ﷺ was just telling us, don't be so rigid. Like, it does not have to be rigid. There's room to roam, right? And it's beautiful because, say for instance, I forget to say Bismillah. I'm like, Alhamdulillah, I don't have to redo my entire wudu because I forgot that. And it's still precedented in another madhab. And the fact that it's still precedented altogether means that you're not stepping outside of the faith. So you're not doing something that is not considered to be permissible. Okay. So that is what I was telling you. All right. So istinshaq is when you put the water into your nose and then you blow it out with your left hand. Okay. And then last, madmada is the gargling of the water in the mouth. So Imam Ahmed says that you absolutely have to do it. All right. Now, muwalla is considered to be the areas where you have to rub, like for example, between the toes or rubbing when you wash your elbows, like that. Do you absolutely have to do that? Or what if you just let the water pass by? Does that make sense? So Imam Malik says you have to do muwalla. You have to actually rub the water there. Okay. So these are areas of difference of opinion. Now, when it comes to Sunnah style, we're gonna just go through this really quickly. I know I'm taking you guys this time. We're supposed to end at 11:45, but the Sunnah style of wudu, my friend made this PowerPoint. It's so cool. I didn't want to redo it because I felt like it was like really nice. The Sunnah things that you add here is number one, intention, because I told you guys primarily I'm teaching from the Hanafi standpoint, and we said that intention, Hanafi standpoint, is not necessarily considered to be something fard, right? So the Sunnah style is adding the intention, saying Bismillah, washing both of your hands when you start, okay? Because we say we wash your hands. So washing both of the hands to the wrists and between the fingers, okay? And then starting from right to left. Be nice to me, please. Okay. Then cleaning the teeth, right? And this is considered to be sunnah, a very strong sunnah. Because the Prophet said, this is miswak. So you can use a toothbrush, you can use your hand, whatever. But the Prophet said that if it wasn't going to be too difficult on his ummah, he would make it obligatory on them to do the miswak, right? So cleaning the teeth. And then washing and rinsing the mouth 3 times. So you use your right hand, which is called madmada. Then rinsing and blowing the nose. That is called istinshaq. Okay. Then washing the face. Now, if someone has a beard, do you have to get the beard super wet? Okay. I don't know why I looked on this side. But do you have to get the beard super wet? The answer is no. You just have to make sure that you get the entire face. So since we said that the face is all of this, then you make sure that the water is passing through the face as well. Some people, you'll see that they do this to their beard, okay? Like you'll see some guys do that. And that's just so that they make sure that they're getting whatever, but you don't have to be super, like, it doesn't have to be soaking, yes. For underneath?
Yeah.
It's like, it kind of stops at your throat. I don't really know where people's beards stop. Alhamdulillah, I wouldn't want a beard. So, but like at your throat, like under here. Yeah. Okay. So washing the arms from the hands all the way to the elbows. Okay. Now, including the elbows part is what's considered to be sunnah. So we said that washing the arms is fard, but including the elbows, that's what's considered to be sunnah. And then wiping over the head once. Now, the thing is, when you wipe over the head, they say that you take the water and you keep your index finger and your thumb not touching your head because you can just go straight to the ears from there, right? But the water that you use to wipe your head is not necessarily, you're just making sure that you still have this extra water to do your ears. Does that make sense? So you take the water, all hand, and then you just leave these 2 fingers up. You don't let them touch your head. You bring it back, and then you just go straight to your ears, right? So that way you're not going back for more water because that hand is already still wet. All right. We talked about the neck already. And then washing both feet, going a little bit above order, and then continuity. So this is the full way of making wudu. First, you start with intention. You say Bismillah, you wash your hands, you clean your teeth, you wash your mouth 3 times, you do istinshaq, you wash your nose, 3 times, you do your face 3 times, and then you wash your arms up to your elbows 3 times, and then you wipe over your head 1 time, all right? And then you come back and you do your ears. Make sense? Okay, and then from there, you wash both of your feet 3 times, you keep the order and you keep it going. You don't take a break in between, you know? All right. Post wudu recommendations, and then we're gonna end here, is du'as, right? These are the du'as. It's gonna be on PowerPoint when I send it to you guys. It's important to memorize these du'as because they are just good. They're good to do after you make wudu. The Prophet made all of these du'as. He recommended for us to make them. So the first dua that we have here is where the Prophet says that you should say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. That I bear witness there's no God worthy of worship except for Allah, and he has no wahdahu la sharika. He is one and he has no partners. Wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, and I bear witness that the Prophet is the servant of Allah and his messenger. Then the second dua is Allahumma ja'alni min at-tawwabin wa ja'alni min al-mutatahhirin. Ya Allah, make me amongst those who turn back to you and make me amongst those who are clean. Now the beauty of this dua is that that we're saying Allahumma ja'alni min at-tawwabin, make me amongst those who turn back to you. And wudu is required for all situations that we're doing to turn back to Allah, right? There's salah, there's tawaf, there's Quran, there's sajda. All of these have to do with turning back to Allah. None of these have to do with anybody else or turning to anyone else or talking to anybody else. It all has to do with our relationship between us and Allah. And then وَجَعَلْنِي مِنَ الْمُتَطَهِّرِينَ. I remember the last class we talked about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he loves those who are clean, right? And so we're asking Allah to make us amongst those whom he loves. And the last dua is Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika, that you say glory be to Allah and all praise and thanks be to you. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, I bear witness that there is no God worthy of worship except for you. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk, and I seek forgiveness from you and I turn back to you. And I like these duas because you're also like just in case anything falls in between the cracks, or maybe you didn't wash up into your elbow, you didn't wash, as good as properly, you're just clarifying that like I'm doing this for you. If there's anything in the cracks, like just kind of forgive me for it. And that is the end of our do. So we're going to go ahead and stop here. I'll take questions too if anybody wants to stick around. But I don't like going over, and I definitely took like 10 minutes of your time, so I do apologize for that. The next class, don't worry, I know that it's like, oh man, we didn't get through everything we're supposed to get through. Will we still end at the proper time? Yes, we'll still be able to make things up. I like to inflate the curriculum a little bit just in case certain classes take more time. So for example, like I highly doubt that this class session will take 45 minutes because a lot of it is just charts. And as long as you have the chart, you'll be able to fix it in. Or for example, the Hajj session, like I told you guys at the beginning, Hajj is something that you just have to do it. I can give you all of these charts. I'm probably gonna have Imam Ibrahim actually come in and teach that session too, because he's actually been for Hajj, I have not. So I can tell you a lot about theory. I cannot tell you anything about actualization. So, stuff like that. So those sessions may not take as long, so we'll be able to split them to be able to still cover material. So next class, we'll talk about ghusl and tayammum, and then hopefully we'll get into salah a little bit, inshallah. Yeah, so those are that, and then I'll make sure to send out the PowerPoint to you guys. I want to correct some things a little bit, and then I'll send it to you guys, inshallah.
So next class is online Tuesday?
On Tuesday, inshallah.
And in person?
Will
you'll
be,
let us know.
yes, this will let you guys know. All right, jazakallah khairan.
Thank you so much. This was
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Nadia.